A Basic RAID Array. The software RAID associated with Linux systems is different from hardware RAID, as it doesn't require any special hardware. However, if you want to take advantage of the data redundancy associated with RAID, it's almost essential to configure RAID on different hard drives. RAID is short for Redundant Array of Independent or Inexpensive Disks. It's independent as to make sure RAID actually protects your data. Different RAID partitions should be located on different physical hard drives. There are 4 levels of RAID supported by Ubuntu Server, known as RAID versions 0, 1, 5, and 6. RAID 0 is a striped volume over different partitions. If the hard drive associated with one partition is lost, the data on the whole RAID 0 volume is lost. RAID 1 is known as a mirror. In other words, it has 2 partitions with identical data, so ideally they should be on different drives. RAID 5 is known as a striped set with parity. Parity bits exist on the 3 or more drives of a RAID 5 array, and if one of the partitions is lost for whatever reason, the data from that partition can be rebuilt from the parity bits on the other partitions. RAID 6 is known as a double parity set, as it can survive the loss of up to 2 partitions, but that means it requires the configuration of 4 partitions, presumably on 4 different physical hard drives. Yeah, RAID 4 is also supported in the Linux kernel, but as RAID 5 and 6 provide better data protection with the same number of disks, what's the point of RAID 4? But that's my personal opinion. Software RAID can be set up with partitions, preferably on different drives, but that's not an absolute requirement. Ideally, they should be equal size partitions since they're a mirror. And if I had an infinite number of hard drives, or enough time to create so many different drives, I would set this up on 3 different drives. One partition on drive 1, one partition on drive 2 that would create the mirror set, and one partition on drive 3 would serve as a spare. And you should know how to create RAID configured partitions with both fdisk and parted. Note how I've done this here on fdisk. Yes, this is all on one drive, the second SCSI drive, but I'm just doing this for illustration purposes. Yeah, I know in real life you really should do this on 3 different physical hard drives. So we'll create a RAID 1 array from the dev SDB1, SDB2, and SDB3 partitions. And that's possible courtesy of the mdadm command, and when we use that command we'll be creating the dev md0 RAID device. So to create that array, we'll run the sudo mdadm create in verbose mode so we can find errors as they appear. Verbose, we're creating the dev md0, the first RAID device. This is a RAID 1 array, so level equals 1. We're setting up 2 partitions as RAID devices, so RAID devices equals 2. We name those partitions dev SDB1 and dev SDB2 with one spare device. Dev SDB3. It's not clean, but will be in a moment. And if you have set this up with large partitions, you can monitor the progress with the proc or reading the proc mdstat file. As I can see from the output from the file, RAID 1 is now active. SDB3 is labeled as the spare, and the RAID array is set up on the other two partitions as named in the output. So now we can format this device. Let's do it to the default third extended file system. Sudo make file system x3 dev md0. Great. And now that that RAID device is formatted, it can be mounted on the directory of your choice, just like any other partition. So let's mount it. On the temp directory. How about that? And now I'll want to implement this change in the fstab configuration file. Using the VI editor. And using the pattern of the other mount points. It's mounted to the third extended file system. And there. And if I hadn't already mounted the RAID array, I could make sure to mount it with the sudo mount a command, which applies every configuration line from the etc/fstab configuration file. You see something called UUIDs in this configuration file, and I discuss how you can do that in a different video. Thank you, and on to another video.